All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Ball Down South. This is the best podcast in the South. Let's go ahead and get into it. We're gonna talk to John first. John, we got the ACC review tonight. Tell me what you think about North Carolina.
North Carolina, I'm not real big on this team. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a couple of reasons. The first year, Mac Brown, he took them, I think, to the Military Bowl. And then I think in his second year, he took them to the Orange Bowl. Then last year, they went to the Duke Mayo Bowl. And he had that one good year a couple of years ago where he went to the Orange Bowl and they lost to Texas A&M. But the biggest thing that I have with North Carolina is their consistency. Can they be consistent? But at the end of the day, I just don't see this team being a threat until they show me that consistency. Now, he's got one of the highest recruiting classes in that area, in the Mac Brown area in North Carolina this year. So it's a wait and see. It's a wait and see with him.
Let me ask you a question. You're talking Mac Brown era in North Carolina or Mac Brown ever?
I'm talking about in the Mac Brown era in North Carolina.
Okay, all right. I was gonna say Mac Brown has some teams in Texas now.
Oh, he had some good teams in Texas, but at the end of the day, consistency is what I look at, and I think North Carolina, 7 wins, maybe 8. I'm gonna go 7. I'm gonna go 7, 8 wins, maybe 8-4.
8-4.
Mm-hmm.
8-4 is a popular selection on this show, but 8-4 is what you're gonna give him.
That's one more give me.
Your fan base is happy with Mac Brown?
I don't think they're happy with the inconsistencies on the field. They done well with the recruiting class this year, and some of the NIL things. But I look at product on the field. Can they move that to a next level type thing? And I just think they haven't done that at North Carolina yet, and it's just a wait and see with them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair. Brad?
So North Carolina, I kind of agree with John on their inconsistencies. I'll start out. They do play Notre Dame at home. That's their big non-conference game. And then at home in the ACC, they got Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, and NC State. Away, they got Miami, Florida, Duke, Virginia, and Wake Forest. That's what their schedule looks like. I'll kind of parlay what John was talking about with their inconsistencies. Mac Brown is recruited really well. Matter of fact, 3 consecutive recruiting classes in a row, he's had a top 15.
Okay.
And then they've been inconsistent on the field. I mean, last year they had Sam Howell, quarterback. He's gone now. This year they've got a quarterback battle in camp. They're not sure exactly who's going to win that. It'll probably either be the Criswell or May. They do have potentially the one of the top receivers, best in the league, Josh Downs, back. They actually have 3 of their 4 top receivers back. Their biggest problem last year was defense. They gave up 420 yards and 32 points a game. That was their biggest problem. So Mac Brown did bring Gene Chiswick in as the associate head coach for defense. This is his first year over there. So he's gonna roll with him and see if he can straighten up their defense a little bit. I'm going to say what John said to begin with. I'm going to stick with 7-5 is what I'm going to stick with on North Carolina.
Okay. Just because of the inconsistency?
Yeah, I mean, you look at their schedule, and I don't see them beating Notre Dame. I don't think they're going to beat NC State. There's just, you go through their schedule, and I just feel like 7-5 is a good landing spot for them.
Okay. Well, let's stay over on that side of the map. Talk to me about Wake Forest, John.
Wake Forest. Well, the news today, everybody must have got it on Twitter and all. Hartman, they're some ordinary I don't know, illness maybe, not football related. And I think that takes a hit to what Wake Forest is wanting to do and possibly beating Clemson. I feel like last year that they do what?
You really think so?
I do. And I think their defense struggled really bad last year. They was in a lot of shootout games. And I just think, without Hartman guiding them and being the quarterback that they need, I feel like that I just don't see them winning, past what, 7, 8 games. I feel like he's the main cog in their offense. And to me, I'm just gonna go with 8 wins at the least. And their ceiling is 9 or 10 with Hartman. So it all depends on how it shakes out with Hartman and how his injury or whatever the illness is, whatever comes to fruition with it.
I will tell you, man, that team can be fast. They can be a quick football team. They really can. Brad, what do you think about them?
Yeah, so last year with Hartman, Sam Hartman's who he's talking about. They had a top 15 offense in the country last year. Hartman threw for over 4,200 yards, 39 touchdowns, and also had 11 touchdowns rushing. Hartman did. He had 50 touchdowns last year, and they were definitely a highlight reel when it comes to their offense last year. This year, I mean, if Hartman gets to come back, I think this team could be a shocker. I think they could be a sleeper, somebody that could surprise the people. They have 9 of their starters back on offense. And their defense was a little shoddy last year. But I'm sure they're going to be working on that side of the ball because that's kind of what kept them out of winning the ACC. They made it all the way to the ACC championship game last year. I believe with Hartman, I believe they can easily go 10-2. Without Hartman, I mean, they may slip to 7-5. I think it just depends on their quarterback. Hopefully he will his health issue or health problem, whatever he's having right now, he'll get healed up and be able to play this year.
Okay. So this team really lives and dies with the quarterback, is what you're saying.
I believe so. I mean, they their offense goes through him. So yeah.
Okay, so both of y'all seem to think that. Let's kind of parlay that into another team that kind of I feel does the same exact kind of thing, really breathes with their quarterback. Tell me about Louisville, John.
Louisville. I like this Louisville team. They got Malik Cunningham. They live and die with Cunningham in that offense. Last year they was really bad on defense. They gave up a lot of yardage. Hopefully, they'll get that straightened out. But the biggest thing that I see with this Louisville situation is Coach Satterfield. Can he get them to 8, 9 wins and maybe get the heat off of them a little bit off the fan base? Because the fan base is, split at times 50-50 on where they want him gone, want him here. I feel like, you got to beat your rival, Kentucky. I look back at Bill Curry. Look at Bill Curry at Alabama. He couldn't beat Auburn. And it got him far. And at the end of the day, I feel like you got to beat your rival and recruit better, in which they have done in the NIL for next year. I feel like it's not going to be this year that if the tale is going to be told. It's going to be next year. If he can't produce next year, I feel like Satterfield will be out. But right now, I feel like he's safe with 6 or 7 wins this year.
Yeah.
And I got him going 7-5 this year. I feel like that's the ceiling for Louisville.
Yeah. See, that's
but that game with Kentucky, they've got to win. I think they've lost 3 in a row, if I'm not mistaken, by at least double digits.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be happening, especially at Louisville.
No, it shouldn't. Right.
Well, with Louisville, I mean, John was talking about their defense. So, what they really struggled on last year was their red zone defense. Three teams come to mind: Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Virginia. 3 games last year that, like, they just got demolished inside the red zone. They couldn't stop nobody. I mean, it was like 5 for 5 for Kentucky and 4 for 4 for Ole Miss and like 5 for 5 for Virginia. I can't remember exactly. The numbers may be switched up there on certain teams, but that was, I mean, they just keep giving up touchdowns every time somebody's there. They can't stop anybody. So that was one of the big things that they did last year. Satterfield, I don't know that a 6-6 team will save his job this year. I'm not sure that will work out for him. Louisville's had several good coaches, Bobby Petrino twice, and got them to some 9 and 10, 11 win seasons. And I'm not so sure that 4 years of 500 ball is going to be what Louisville fans are going to want. So he is recruiting well for the next season, but if he doesn't win some games this year, I'm not so sure that he'll be there.
Yeah,
that's my thing. Now he has brought in some transfers. He's brought in, a linebacker from Ole Miss, a defensive tackle from Arizona State, a couple of wide receivers, and he has brought in some transfers this time. So maybe that'll make a difference. The Kentucky game at the end of the season is their hardest non-conference game. I do believe they'll win the other ones. Their home slate, they got to play FSU, Pitt, Wake Forest, and NC State. Away, their big game away is Clemson in the ACC, So, I mean, looking at their schedule, I believe there's a chance that they can get to 8-4.
okay.
I think there's a chance they can get to 8-4. I think what they'll do to do that, they're going to have to beat Pitt or Wake Forest at home to do that. And I'm not both games, but they're going to have to win at least one of those to get to 8-4. And I believe that there's a chance they can go 8-4, more likely 7-5. I think 8-4 will definitely keep Satterfield there because it'll be progress in the right direction if he can do that.
Okay. So both of you all seem to have Satterfield a little bit on the hot seat. Who's, curveball question here, but who's a favorite to step in for him if they're going to get rid of him? This is a new administration, new athletic director in town. The old ones hired him. The new ones are going to get somebody new. Who's it going to be?
Well, the easiest answer to that's about 100 miles up the road in Cincinnati. Luke Fickell. That would be one of the phone calls I would make.
Okay. John, you got anybody?
He took it right out of my mouth. I thought Luke Fickell, he's recruited Cincinnati really well. He took them last year to the playoffs. And actually, a lot of people don't realize that he gave Bama actually a really good game in the first half.
Yeah.
Until the talent took over, the SEC type talent.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, Louisville's going to have to do better than what they're doing the last couple of years. They're going to have to stop playing 500 ball if they want to keep Satterfield, because I feel like if you keep playing 500 ball, Louisville fans ain't just going to they ain't going to put up with it.
No, they're not. Okay, well, let's stop riding on the Cards. We love them, so let's take it out to one of their rivals who, when they were successful with Lamar and stuff like that in the ACC. What about Clemson? Tell me about Clemson, John.
Clemson. I feel like, last year I felt like last year was a rebuilding year for Clemson. They lost Brent Venables, the defensive coordinator. They just had all kinds of injuries, and still they went 10-3. That's still a good season. I mean, that's like at Alabama. You still, in a rebuilding year, you have 10 wins, and that's just the norm around Clemson and the Alabamas of the world and Georgias. They do bring back DJ quarterback. They bring back Will Shipley. I feel like they might get back to the playoffs this year. I think there's a good chance for them to be back in there. I'm going to go. I'm trying to think right here. This is a toughie. I think I'm going to give Clemson 10-2, or at least 11-2. I feel like they're built for another run, especially in the ACC, and especially to get back to the playoffs where they belong. And I feel like this is going to be a really good team. I think there's going to be a little bit some changes, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But I feel like Sweeney is, you know how Sweeney is. He always reloads.
Okay.
And I feel like he'll have a better team this year than he did last year, even in a rebuilding year. So I got them going 10-2, 11-2 with a loss in the they'll lose a game in the regular season. Not sure yet who. Maybe NC State, maybe Wake. It just depends on with how the injuries and stuff set up for the Wake situation. But I feel like they'll get back to the college football playoff.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Go ahead, Brad.
Well, I mean, their quarterback situation last year wasn't good. I mean, DJ just didn't perform up to par. Their offense was very sluggish, and that's what kept them from winning a couple of more games like their norm, what they had been doing for the last 6-7 years. They brought in a 5-star quarterback. His name is Cade Klubnik, and I believe that he will push. I believe he'll push TJ. And matter of fact, it would not surprise me if early in the season he doesn't get a run in one of the games. I believe he'll get a push to see what he can do. So, other than that, I will say that Clemson's still got NFL talent all over their roster. I mean, if they can stay healthy, their defensive line might just be the best defensive line in the country. They have Brian Breesy and Miles Murphy on the defensive line, and there's a couple of other dudes there that are basically all NFL talent people. So, on defense, look for Clemson to possibly have a top 5 defense in the country, even though they lost Brent, their defensive coordinator. Looking at their schedule, they play at Notre Dame the 3rd week of the season. That's their big non-conference game. Is they play at Notre Dame. They finish the season at South Carolina. Or no, I take that back. South Carolina's at home. They finished the season with South Carolina. Their away schedule in the ACC minus Wake Forest looks pretty handle. They can handle that, I'm pretty sure. The Wake Forest game will depend on Sam Hartman. So, and then they got NC State, Louisville, and Miami, Florida at home. So, I think a 10-2 season for them is very viable. I think they can do that. That's where I'm going to stick. Is 10-2.
10-2. All right, sounds good. All right, speed up. Let's go Virginia. Where are we going with Virginia, John?
Virginia. They got a new head coach, Tony Elliott, former Clemson offensive coordinator. They just recently won the ACC title in 2019. They bring back Brennan Armstrong, Dontavian Wilkes, Deontay Thompson, Billy Kemp. The only thing I have with Virginia is they got a major issue at O-line. Can they protect the quarterback? Can they and get protection? And their defense last year just absolutely got torched. And at the end of the day, you got to have a little bit of defense to play football. And Bronco Mendenhall gave this guy, the head coach, he gave him some talent to work with this year. And I got Virginia winning probably 7-8 games. I think, especially at the quarterback position, Brandon Armstrong is probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the ACC. And this is a team that has all the talent on the offensive side of the ball. It's just, can the defense make stops, and can the defense stop from giving up big plays? And that's my final answer on that. Tony Elliott, by the way, is going to do a really good job. He done really well at Clemson. Especially him, you give him and Venables, they go off to Oklahoma and Virginia. That Sweeney's, the coaching tree there is pretty stout. So I feel like he's going to do good at Virginia. So I got him going 8-4, 7-4, something like that. I think they'll have a good year.
Okay. Everybody can't be 8-4, Brad. Tell me something else.
Well, I'm looking at their schedule, and they're a non-conference. I see 4 wins. I mean, I don't see how they can lose one of those with some of the people that they have. They have QB Brennan Armstrong back. They have 2 of the probably top 6 best wide receivers in the ACC on their team. And like John said, they have Clemson's OC coming in as their head coach. I think that bodes well for them on the offensive side of the ball. Their home conference schedule could be a little rough. They play Louisville, Miami, UNC, and Pitt at home. That could be a little rough, but away they play Syracuse and Duke and Georgia Tech. That's probably 3 of the lower tier teams in the ACC. So looking at their schedule, I can easily see them get to 7 wins. I'm going to stick with 7-5 for Virginia for the first year head coach.
Okay. All right. At least it's not 8-4. So tell me about Virginia Tech, John.
Virginia Tech. This is a team that is O-line problems. They bring in Brent Pry, new head coach. Justin Fuentes, the last couple of years has not been really good. There's a lot of problems there. They lost Robinson, their wide receiver, to Kentucky. They lost a lot of talent on that side of the ball. And I just don't see maybe 6 wins, 7 wins, especially in his first season. This is going to be a tough task for Virginia Tech this year. There's a lot of roster talent that is short on that team this year. And at the end of the day, I just don't see Virginia Tech doing anything of significance. I will say this though. Brent Pry was a graduate assistant under Coach Beamer, Frank Beamer, and Bud Foster at one point. So he's got the pedigree to do good there. It's just in his first year, I just don't see it happening. I look at maybe 6, 7 wins.
All right. 6 or 7? 6 or 7, you're sticking to it. Tell me about a team that had an outstanding player last year that, is one of a kind type of guy. Tell me about Pitt.
Pitt.
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is gone. Their top receiver is gone to USC on an NIL deal, a huge NIL deal. I'll tell you where you're going to find out whether Pitt is really good or not is when they play Tennessee right off the bat. If Pitt can beat Tennessee at home and win that game, I think there's an opportunity for Pitt to make some noise. But losing Kenny Pickett and their top receiver is just going to be, I think it's going to be too much. I think this is going to be a rebuilding year for Pitt. I see 7 wins at the most. I just, that Tennessee game, I got it circled. That's the big game for Pitt. If they can get by that Tennessee game, there's an opportunity for them to make some noise because Tennessee is going to be really good.
Okay. Right.
Well, with Pitt, I mean, they went 11-3 last year and actually won the ACC championship. They did lose their Kenny Pickett, the big quarterback, but they brought in a USC transfer, Slovis. The kid threw for about 50 touchdowns in 2 years at USC, and they brought him in. They still have some really talented defensive linemen, Baldonado and Cansey. They were first and second team all ACC last year. They had 16 sacks and 25 tackles for loss. So, there is some star power there on the defensive side of the ball for Pitt. John's talking about the Tennessee game, and the Tennessee game in the grand scheme of things is a pretty big game. But for Pitt, they opened the season against West Virginia. The very first game of the season is West Virginia. And it's actually a couple of days before. It's September 1st. And they play West Virginia. I believe that could be a telltale for them as well. It is a big game. Then they come back in the second game and play Tennessee. So, the first 2 games of the year is going to be pretty big for them. Their home schedule in the ACC is very manageable. They play Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and Duke at home. So, they Louisville, UNC, Virginia, and Miami, Florida away. So their away schedule is a little bit more difficult. I could see them getting to 8 wins this year. I also can see them going 6 or 7 wins this year. I'm going to go 7-5 is what I'm going to go.
Okay. John, tell me about Syracuse.
Syracuse. Can Dino Babers turn it around? They went for a time there where they didn't have a winning season from 2002 to 2009. And if you remember correctly, they used to have a coach named Paul Pasqualoni, and he had a guy by the name of Donovan McNabb. And a lot of people don't remember that. That was my childhood. But Syracuse is a place you can win and do really well, because then I think they was in the top 5, top 15 about every year, especially with McNabb and Marvin Harrison. They had some really good teams then. And but the biggest game for Syracuse, I think, is September 3rd against Louisville at home. Because last year they lost 41-3 at Louisville. And I think that game right there is going to depend on what Syracuse does the rest of the year. If they can beat Louisville, Louisville coming in with a chip on their shoulder and a chance to have a better season, I believe Syracuse needs to win that game. And I tell you something about Syracuse. They got a running back named Sean Tucker. He's probably one of the most underrated running backs in the country that a lot of people ain't looking at as a Heisman sleeper, and I put him on my Heisman sleeper watch. And this team is really good. And they got the Jarrett Schrader from Mississippi State as a quarterback, transfer from Mississippi State. So there's pieces there to win, because in 2018 they won 10 games. Remember, they beat Clemson. They had a really good year that year. So I believe this might be Dino Babers' last chance at redemption of winning back that fan base and giving them an opportunity to win. And if he goes 6-6, win 7 games, I just don't see Syracuse keeping him beyond that. Yeah. But I got Syracuse going 6-6. I just don't see them being anything less than that.
Does 6-6 keep the job though?
Most likely not.
Most likely not.
I mean, the last 2 or 3 years, it's not been real good, except that 1 year that he had that 2018 team that went that beat Clemson and had some huge wins on the schedule. Yeah. I just don't think 6-6 will keep his job. I don't see it.
Okay. All right. Brad, give me some numbers on Syracuse.
I'm going to start with Dino Babers and go with what John was talking about. He's had one winning season in the last 7 years. I mean, that's a pretty telling sign right there. They do have one of the best running backs in the ACC that nobody's probably ever heard of, Sean Tucker. Their quarterback play, though, was abysmal last year. And the Garrett Schrader is his name. He's going to have to be improved. 5 times last year in 5 different games, he threw for less than 100 yards a game. He was abysmal last year, and that's what kept them. They have a decent defense. They have an all ACC first team linebacker, Michael Jones, and then they have their second and third leading tacklers back from last year, and they have 2 top corners on that team. So Deuce Chestnut and Garrett Williams is the corners' names. So they have some talent on the defense. I'm just not sold on them, though. I look at their schedule, and they play Purdue and Notre Dame in the non-conference part of their schedule. And then, you look at their schedule, they played Louisville, NC State, Florida State at home. They played Clemson away, Pittsburgh away, Wake Forest away. I think John's giving them a whole lot more credit than I'm going to. I'm not going to say a very good season for them. I'm capping them at 3 wins, 3-9.
Oh boy!
And Dino Babers is going to be gone. I mean, if that happens, he won't survive.
Man, are we beginning the coaching carousel podcast tonight? Is that what we're sitting here doing? Preseason, we're already starting the coaching. We got Luke Fickle coming down to Louisville. We got this guy going out. All kinds of stuff happening tonight. All right, well, let's take it to the underdog we all love in the ACC. John, tell me about NC State.
NC State, they bring back Devin Leary. They bring back Drake Thomas. I believe he was first team. No, Isaiah Moore. Isaiah Moore is the one I was thinking about. But they bring back Drake Thomas, Isaiah Moore, first team All ACC. Devin Leary passed for 2,433 yards last year, a school record. 35 touchdowns. They bring back Peyton Wilson. This is maybe Dave Doran's best NC State team that he's ever had at NC State. And I believe they're going to make some history. I believe there's going to be champagne bottles cracking in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I believe that NC State's going to get to the ACC championship one way or another, unless Clemson folds. I believe NC State's going to go to Clemson and knock them off. That's my bold prediction.
All right.
I'm a real big believer in this NC State team, and I believe they're going to go 10-2.
10-2. Okay.
I believe they'll lose one game in the regular season, and they'll lose one in the bowl season.
Okay. Brad, here's some numbers.
Well, so their schedule, they play Texas Tech. Home schedule in the ACC is FSU, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, and Boston College. And their away schedule is Clemson, Syracuse, Louisville, and UNC. That's their schedule. Texas Tech, third week of the season, could be a difficult game for them, but it is at home. So, when you look at that, I looking at their schedule, I'm with John. I think this is probably their best team that they've had, and they were ranked in the top 20 last year and finished the season strong. They have 10 starters back on their defense from last year. They beat Clemson last year at home. John was talking about them going to Clemson and beating them this year. They did beat them last year. Devin Leary's their quarterback. I believe that him and Sam Hartman, who might not get to play this year now, depending on what happens, but I believe them two are the best quarterbacks in the league. in the ACC. I don't think there's anybody else that can touch them two. I believe them two are both the best. And Devin Leary, he only threw 3 INTs last year, 3 interceptions all the way through the whole season. I look at their schedule and I'm going to be bold. I'm going to give them 11-1.
Oh man.
I'm going to give them 11-1.
For NC State, 11-1.
I think it could be a pretty miracle year for them.
So are they going to be in the playoff?
If they go 11-1, as long as that one loss is not to Clemson and Clemson is undefeated, that would put them in the.
It certainly would.
That put them in the ACC championship game. And if you go 11-1 and win the ACC championship game, yes, I think you would make the playoff.
Okay, you certainly would be. All right, well, let's talk about a team that's not known for their football, but definitely packs a punch in basketball. Tell me about Duke, John.
The Duke Blue Devils. Not long ago, they went to they had 5 winning seasons in 6 years. They went 2013, 2008, and 6 out of 7 bowl games. So, Duke can make it. I mean, they got the talent. They can get the talent in there, especially with Mike Elko, the Texas A&M defensive coordinator. I feel like he's going to do a good job there. He's defensive minded coach. The only issue that I have with Duke is they're 6-21 since 2019, and that's not good. That's not football royalty.
Yeah,
So now if that was basketball, they'd be throwing stones at Coach K. But football, I don't. They're not real big fans in football, but at the end of the day, I just don't see Duke winning. Maybe 4 games, 5, especially in his first season as a head coach.
Yeah,
but he'll do good there because he was really good at Texas A&M. He was a really good defensive-minded coach.
4 games, your final answer?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, Brad, tell me how you feel.
I mean, Mike Elko is brought in, former defensive coordinator at Texas A&M and Notre Dame, a couple of places that he's been. The problem with Duke is that a lot of their talent, what little talent they had, but a lot of the talent transferred out after the coach left. This is his first year, and from what I'm hearing, even down there, is that they just simply don't have the talent on the field to compete this year. To be quite honest with you, I could very easily see this team going 3-9 in his first season. Now, I think Mike Elko will get the job done and bring in his guys and bring in his players and do a much better job in future seasons. So.
Okay. All right. Now, that's your final answer? You're going lower than him?
I am. I'm going to go 3-9.
Okay. Give me one of the 3.
One of the 3 that they win?
Yes.
I mean, they play Northwestern, NC, A&T. I mean, they play a couple games that they should win,
NC, A&T. All right. That's going to be one of them. All right. Let's go to a team that, John, I'm sure you liked growing up, and it's just they haven't been there. They've almost been there a couple years ago with turnover chain. Tell me about the smoke in Miami.
It's money time in Miami, the way I look at it. Mario Cristobal went back to his alma mater. I think, the big thing with Miami is the NIL. They went and spent big this past offseason. But and then they got Charlie Strong. They brought in Kevin Steele, former Auburn disciple. They brought in Josh Gaddis. So he brought in a top-notch staff. I'm just not so sure that it's going to be what they expect this year. And sorry, Miami fans, I just don't think that the U is back yet. Now, give him a couple years, I think he'll do really well. And another thing with Cristobal's teams, they ain't soft. You watch them at Oregon, they're hard nosed, they play hard. I believe this Miami team's going to play hard. I think they're going to have some times where they win some games we're not supposed to see them win. But the trip that I see them making that will determine whether they have a good year or not is when they go to Texas A&M and Kyle Field. If they can go to Texas A&M and beat the Aggies, you might want to start chanting the U is back a little bit, because that's with it, especially how Texas A&M is loaded up this year. That's the one game that I'm looking forward to, in week 3, that if Miami wins that, then hey, you can say Miami is a contender instead of a pretender. So I'm going with 8 wins. I believe he'll get 8 wins in his first year. And that'll satisfy Miami fans, because they've been hoping for a little bit more than that. But, first year, you're not going to expect a lot, I don't think. Probably in his second and third year, especially, with the NIL deals, I think, recruiting will take off like it did this past offseason. So give him some time, give Cristobal time, and give him a chance to do what he did at Oregon. And I think you'll see a lot of changes at the U.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We got a hard number on Miami? Did we get a hard number from you?
Oh yeah, I put 8 wins.
8?
8-4.
Okay. Brad, tell me about beaches and bikinis, buddy.
They got a quarterback. He's got a good quarterback. He was a freshman last year, Tyler Van Dyke. He threw for nearly 3,000 yards and 25 touchdowns and only 6 picks as a freshman last year. He ought to be improving quite a bit from his freshman year to his sophomore year. So he's got a good quarterback. One of the biggest problems I see with them is their offensive line. Our offensive line has to get better. They give up a ton of sacks last year, a ton of hurries and hits and everything else last year, and their offensive line has to get better. Cristobal's brought in a slew of transfers, to be honest with you. There's at least 6 guys that'll probably be on the depth chart for the defense. The Texas A&M game, they go to Texas A&M. That is a big game. I think one of the telltales for them, though, this year is going to be North Carolina at home. That's early in the season, week 5 or so. And the reason why I say that is this is a pretty big sign that the U hasn't been quite the U lately. Miami has not beaten North Carolina in football since 2018. That has to stop. If they're gonna be what the whole country wants them to be and be a contender, that has to stop. They can't. It's a home game this year. They can't get beat by North Carolina. I'm looking at their schedule. John said 8 wins. I think they can get there. I'm going to stick with 7-5 in his first year. I think it's a little bit more of a build. He's recruiting really well, and Cristobal is going to get it done. I mean, he was born in Miami. He played in Miami. He started his coaching career in Miami. He is Miami. So I think he's going to get the job done.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about their rival, Florida State. This is a little bit of a troubling situation here, but tell me about the Noles, John.
FSU, they bring back Jordan Travis. They get Trey Benson at running back. They'll be able to run the ball efficient, especially with Travis, him scrambling and whatnot. They bring back Derek McClendon, Jamie Robinson. I believe this is going to be the tale for Coach Norvell. This probably will be his best roster that he's had since he's been there. And if he can't go anywhere between 6 or 7 wins, I don't know. I don't know what you do at Florida State, because at one time they was a powerhouse, and with especially with Bobby Bowden, they had them good years with Jimbo, but the last couple 3-4 years it's been a coaching carousel. It's been a whirlwind for Florida State, and Florida State fans don't want to keep going through this carousel over and over and over. They want you know notoriety. They want recognition like Miami.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if he can't get them past 6 wins, I just don't see Norvell sticking it for FSU. But I'm not going to go that route. I believe they're going to win 7, 8 games. I believe this FSU team's probably the best he's had at Florida State.
Okay.
And I'm giving them a little bit of hope this year. I believe Norvell will stick it out, and I believe he'll have another year to improve on the transfer portal and the NIL. But this is his best team by far that he's had.
Okay. All right. Brad?
I'm not quite as high on Florida State. I mean, he's brought in a bunch of transfers. He's brought in a couple of kids from Oregon. He's brought in UFC linebacker. He's brought in a defensive end from Albany. He's brought in, he's brought in a lot of key transfers to help out this year on this team. But Mike Norvell's 8-13 in 2 years at Florida State University. I'm going to pause for a second and just let that sink in. I mean, Florida State has been, since the early 70s, has been one of the top teams in the country year after year after year after year. It's not been that long ago that Jimbo Fisher was there and the same model was there. The past 5-6 years, they've went through 3 coaches, and they just seem to not be able to get it done. And there's talent all over the state in Florida, and I'm not sure what the deal is and what the problem issue is with Florida State being able to hang and get some of that talent that's down there. But they are in a hole, and I'm not sure that they can dig themselves out. I look at their schedule, and they play LSU in New Orleans, the second game of the season. That's going to be a huge game. LSU's got a new coach and had a down year last year. Brian Kelly's there, and that's going to be a huge game for FSU and Mike Norvell. If they don't show something in that game, I believe it's just going to go downhill from there. I mean, looking at their schedule, I can see them getting to 6 wins. Do I think 6 wins is going to save Mike Norvell's job? He's 8-13. I don't think being 5 games under 500 in your 3rd season at FSU is going to keep his job.
Okay, well, that's sad. Let's go to a team that isn't the most popular, but I feel like they got good ball going on. Let's talk about Boston College, John.
Boston College, this is an interesting team to watch. There's been games where, they've had decent production out of the offense, and their defense has been really good at times. They had the game, what was it, last year, where they upset Missouri at home. And, I'm looking at their schedule, and they play Clemson and NC State at home. And then they go on the road to Virginia Tech and FSU. The biggest key for them is beating Rutgers in that first game. Then they play Maine, they play at UConn, and then they play Duke. You're going to have to win at least 3 of those or split one of them, go to maybe 2-1 to have a decent season, maybe 6, 7 wins. but just looking at their ACC schedule on the home and road slate, it's an uphill battle. Especially, considering the kind of team they are and the kind of team that they run out there. They're not the most popular team, like you said, but they're a team that sometimes every now and then will pull an upset. Look what they had a few years back. They had Matt Ryan as quarterback, and they went to a big bowl. And he's a well-known quarterback in the NFL, so it can be done at Boston College. But just looking at their schedule, I just don't. Maybe they upset a NC State or a Clemson, but there's maybe a 30% chance of that happening. And then playing at FSU and Virginia Tech is still a hard game, especially in the ACC. So I'm going to go 6 wins for Boston College. I just don't see them getting past that.
Okay. Brad, give me something good about the Eagles.
Well, Boston College, they started out 4-0 last year. Their quarterback, Phil Jerkovic, got hurt. And after he got hurt, their season kind of fell apart. They have one of the top wide receivers in the ACC in Zay Flowers. Their quarterback is back and healthy as of now. The season's about to start up, and him being able to take the hits and stay healthy is going to be a major key for Boston College. They do have a transfer from Notre Dame at tight end that's going to slide in at that spot, and should be somebody that the quarterback Phil Jerkovic can use. They have a hard-hitting safety. His name is Jaden Woodbay, and he's a hard-hitting safety in the back of the defense. He leads a strong back seven on their defense. So they do have that going for them. I can see them doing a pretty good season. For them, I think if they can go to a bowl game, I think that would probably be a pretty good season for them. And I can see that happen. I think there is 6 or 7 games that they can win. I'm going to stick in that range, in the 6-7 range. I'm probably going to go with what John said, 6-6.
Okay. It's kind of split on them. All right, John, tell me how you feel about Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech needs to get back to Georgia Tech football.
Yes, they do.
Controlling the games, controlling the clock. The defense hasn't been good. The offense hasn't been good. It's not what it was when they had, Calvin Johnson and they had, Reggie Ball at quarterback. It's Georgia Tech's went downhill. And they need to get back to that. But I just don't see it this year. You look at the schedule at FSU, at Virginia Tech, Miami at home, at North Carolina, at Georgia. That schedule is a train wreck. And out of those games, how many are you really going to win out of those games? With the kind of, success that they've had in the past, I could see maybe 6, 7 wins, 8 wins. But with what they've got, and especially where they lost Jamar Gibbs to Alabama, that was a big hit to their running back room. So I got maybe 3 wins at the most.
Okay.
Maybe 4, depending on the non-conference side of it, because they got a few easy games in there at the beginning. But at FSU still hard, at Virginia Tech still hard, and when they end the season at their rival, Georgia, and at North Carolina, like North Carolina's going to be really good. So I just don't see them winning anything past 3 games at the least.
Okay.
So I got them going, I guess, 3-9. That's my pick.
Yeah. Brad, you got good news for him?
I can't say that I do. I mean, Georgia Tech has been over the years has had and on has had some really good teams and some really good players. Demetrius Thomas comes to mind, not too long ago, that played for them. Jeff Collins is in his 4th year. He has three win seasons. That's what he has in his 4th year. They do play a very tough schedule. They brought in a transfer quarterback. His name is Zach Gibson. And their quarterback coach, Chris Winkie, is bringing him along. Their starter, Jeff Sims, has had some injury issues over the years. And I believe that, I don't know if he'll get named the starter, but I believe that they'll give Zach Gibson a look as the starter at some point during the season. They do have Dante Smith as the running back. But you look at their schedule, and they play Ole Miss at home. They play at Georgia. They play Clemson. They play Miami at home, at Pitt, at FSU, at Virginia Tech, at North Carolina. I'm gonna go 4 wins with them is what I'm gonna do. I just don't see them getting more than 4 wins. I think 4-8.
4-8.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's gonna be it. That's all for our ACC preseason preview. From John, Brad, and myself, thank you all for being the part of the Ball Down South.